Welcome back to the Bonsai Builders podcast. I'm your host, Addison. For many of us, the great nurseries of Japan are the stuff of legend. We see their trees in exhibitions and magazines, but what are they actually like on the inside? What's the philosophy, the daily rhythm, and the role they play in the broader bonsai world? Today, we're incredibly lucky to get an insider's view. My guest, Andrej, is a fourth-year apprentice from Slovakia, studying right now at the amazing Aichi-en nursery. We're going to talk about his path to Japan, the reality of the apprentice's daily life, and what makes Aichi-en a pillar of the Japanese bonsai ecosystem. Andrej, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I wanted to say I've really been enjoying your YouTube videos that you've been sharing. I feel like they're very dense with really, really awesome information. Could you take us through a little bit of what your bonsai journey has been like to date? In terms of, what did your bonsai practice look like in Slovakia when you started, and how did you end up in Japan?
So my first bonsai exposure was probably when I was 14 years old. That's when I got my first bonsai. But I didn't take it really seriously that time. I just got a very cheap production-made bonsai at a hardware store. And the reason why I got it was because I wanted to put it as a decoration for my snake in his terrarium. So sometimes I just cut it back, watered it. But after like 1 year or so, the tree died. And then until I was like 21, I didn't get another one. But when I was 21 years old, I got like a proper bonsai. And I had it maybe for a week or so. And I started to take it very seriously. Every day was just bonsai, doing research, trying to work more and more. And very quickly, I found out that bonsai is something I want to do for a living. So I had two options. Either I will stay in Europe and learn on my own, plus some workshops and so on. And if I am very lucky and studying on my own, maybe I can do it for a living when I'm 40, maybe when I'm 50. Or the second option was to go to Japan for 5 years. Yes, so some say sacrifice 5 years, but I say invest 5 years into yourself. And after 5 years, come back to Europe and already do it for a living. So I chose the option to go to Japan.
That's awesome. So you knew very early on that you wanted to do bonsai professionally.
Yeah.
What crystallized that thought? Like, how did you go from, I really like this and I want to research and be interested in it, to like, what made you think this is a good thing that I want to invest in as a career? Like, how did that shift happen?
I have a little bit strange personality that anything I do, I go very, very deep. But that also takes a lot of fun, because almost I cannot do anything just to enjoy. I always need to be not like best, but perfect. Like I need to be better and better. And bonsai is a thing that you almost never can reach a ceiling. You can only grow. And that's why probably I chose bonsai, because I never can get bored. So, yeah.
That makes sense. I think a lot of the people that I've talked to on the podcast share a similar mindset of, there's a lot of people who are perfectionists, I think, who end up being good at bonsai because it just takes a really high level of detail, right? And then the other thing is people are drawn to, hey, this is really complex. There's a really high skill ceiling or knowledge ceiling or whatever you want to talk about. The hobby keeps you guessing, or there's a lot, you can put a lot of time in, but then you keep improving your skills, right? So it's very interesting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Was the bonsai scene, what was the bonsai scene like in Slovakia? Was there clubs? How many people were at the clubs? What kind of age ranges were people? Where were you getting your knowledge from whenever you were in Slovakia?
I think Slovakia is pretty much same I can say rest of Europe in meaning of bonsai. The level is pretty much, you cannot compare it with Japan, because I think you will never be able to fully compare bonsai overseas with Japan, because in Japan you have a time, the bonsai here is been made for, hundreds of years. And in Europe, or in Slovakia maybe 70 years, 80 years, and that's pretty much just one generation. So we don't really have two generation trees. I think most of countries outside of Japan don't have two generation trees. So I think it's pretty much same like everywhere else. With clubs, I was never in a club before. I joined club just almost a day before I left to Japan. So I can't really tell you much about clubs in Slovakia, but I was going to workshops that were locally in around my city.
That makes sense too that you wanted to do this professionally and you saw the pipeline to make a professional bonsai artist in Europe is just going to be a lot longer. You know, you'll have to go to workshops a few times a year versus you're getting thousands or tens of thousands of hours in bonsai in your apprenticeship, right? So you're getting there to that high level much faster, right? So how did you choose, like, could you tell me a little bit about your journey to Aichi-en? Like, were you targeting that nursery specifically to do an apprenticeship? Like, how did it end up that you ended up there?
Well, there is many good gardens or nurseries that accept foreign apprentices, but for me, Aichi-en was special because my oyakata, my master, he doesn't see it as just business. He sees it more like a lifestyle, like part of his life, and it's not main source of his income. So he doesn't need to only get the trees, make it nice, and sell it so he can eat or pay for the stuff. So at Aichi-en we get materials or already finished trees, and we completely remade them into a lot better trees with better structure. And for me, structure was always something I really wanted to learn, because many people just do nice bonsai for silhouette to make nice picture. But for me that was never satisfying, because next year if you use long branches and bend them around, next year the tree is again out of shape. But with good structure it almost never get out of shape. So that was a thing I really wanted to learn. That's why I chose Aichi-en mainly. Also, small reason was that my master, my kata, speaks fluent English. So we don't need to learn Japanese. It's a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet that accelerates the time to ramp into the hobby, right? Or into the apprenticeship because, you know, there's not that language barrier as much. Very cool. Did you really like Japan? Or was it like, oh, I want to be in Japan as well? Or it just ended up like, hey, this is where the best bonsai is done. I really like bonsai. I need to go to Japan.
I think it was mostly just because of bonsai. I mean,
Nice.
I like Japan. It's not that I don't like Japan, but the idea of just living here was not the reason.
Yeah, you were always thinking, hey, I'm going to go back to Slovakia or Europe and establish my business there.
Yeah,
Makes
that's
sense.
right.
Makes sense. You mentioned that Tanaka-san has a very specific ethos to his bonsai building, you know, about setting the right structure and things like that. How did you find that out, or like how did you know that about Aichi-en before you went, or when during your experience did you get that understanding that like, hey, they're doing things with like a longevity focused mindset for their building, or like a long-term mindset for building their trees? When did you get that intuition, or when did you find that out?
I read a blog from a Peter T. So he was apprentice at Aichi-en a long time ago, and he has a really nice blog where he explains everything. So that was a main source of information. And then I found out about apprentices that were at the Aichi-en just at the time when I was starting to be interested in Aichi-en. So I found out their Instagrams and see the work that's currently being made.
Nice. That's awesome. Were there other, I mean, I know Aichi-en ended up being the right fit for you, but were there other nurseries that you considered or like were on your research bench, or did that, you pretty much hone into that one pretty quickly?
Yeah, it was from real beginning, it was just Aichi-en.
That's awesome. And then how did you get the apprenticeship? Like, did you send an email to Tanaka-san, or did you talk with the apprenticeships, or?
I saw a post on Instagram from from apprentice that recently finished. They are looking for new apprentice because they have open spot. And yeah, it was just, I guess I was just very lucky because I opened Instagram and that post was just posted. It was like 1 minute ago. So I replied instantly and I just said, hey, I'm interested. I want to go. So
That's
and
amazing. And then you just did
we
it.
just talked. Yeah. Yeah, then we
What
just
was
talked details and we just talked details and yeah, I just went.
That's crazy. What was the time between you responding to the Instagram post and you being in Japan? Like how much time passed? Like was it a week later, a month later, a year?
I think it was like 3 or 4 months, but only because it was just right at the time when the Japanese borders were opening because of COVID. So it was a bit longer. The paperwork was a bit longer because of COVID. But if it was, for example, now, yeah, it can take just literally a day and you can come.
Wow. So did you have a backup plan? Like if you didn't get an an apprenticeship in Japan, or you didn't do bonsai, was there something else you were going to do? Or you knew 100% this is what I'm going to do and you were going to make it happen no matter what?
Yeah, no matter what.
Okay. That's good. I feel like that's a very Japanese. I'm wondering do you think that meshes with their culture about like committing to something 100% and like having a passion? And have you noticed that meshes at all with Japanese culture or?
Yeah, I think so, because Japanese people, they usually do one thing and they become professionals or experts in that specific thing. So yeah, I guess it's matching pretty well.
Yeah, you notice that I think a lot in the cuisine. If you go to an American restaurant, there's hamburgers, there's fries, there's chicken, there's all sorts of different dishes. But I feel like in Japan, you go to like the ramen shop and they just sell ramen, and then there's the sushi where they just have sushi, and there's the soba noodles, the udon. Like there's all these different specific restaurants, which is kind of funny that where it's all segment. Like American cuisine is like one restaurant, but then for Japanese cuisine, there's 15 different niches or whatever, right? And they only make that really well there.
Yeah, and
super
also
cool.
Another good example of this is that when we were doing a new workshop in a Aichi-en in a garden, and I was really surprised because I'm used to from Slovakia, you hire a construction company or some guy and he almost do everything about the building. But here in Japan, there was a guy that just came to put the concrete on the ground. Then there was a guy to make it more even. Then there is another guy to do another thing. So they have like 50 guys, and every single one is, as I said, expert in the thing he's doing. So that was very interesting to me.
That's really impressive. Yeah, I think there's definitely much more of a craftsman culture in Japan too, where like doing something really well is like people take pride in it, and it enables that a level of sophistication or diving deep into a specific topic. So, I didn't realize that you initially, like you already knew when you first started bonsai that you wanted to do it professionally. You're still on that track, obviously, but has your time at the nursery taught you anything or influenced like how you want that business to look? Like, do you want to be more working on finished trees, or do you want to be more working on teaching people in Europe? Do you want to be growing trees? Like, has your thoughts on like what your business will actually look like changed based on your apprenticeship?
I think it didn't really changed. It just elevated. Like I understood more what I really want to do. So my idea is I want to pretty much do everything, finish trees, raw materials. But what I enjoy most is working on raw materials to change or really raw yamadori and make nice first structure, graft branches to bring foliage closer to the trunk and not just bend branches around to like squeeze the tree, but to make it properly for a future, not just for today.
Makes sense. So your teachings have helped you form what your ethos and style is going to be within the trees that you make. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So I was talking with Andrew Robson, who is a U.S. professional who did a U.S. apprenticeship, right? And so Japan's commonly regarded as obviously the mecca of bonsai, or, the highest level of skill, and like the techniques you're learning are very unique. But the flip side of it is you're not in the area where you want to set your business up yet, right? So the potentially your on-ramp to your business scaling up will be a little bit slower, but you'll obviously have really high level of technique and capabilities. Is that something you think about? Or how do you think about where you're going to establish your business in Europe and how to make those connections? Or is that something where you're fully focused on your apprenticeship right now, and then when you get back, you'll start that journey of building your business?
I think while you are apprentice, or while I am apprentice, it's important to already start making connections, a little bit customer work, or even through the phone, video calls, or just giving a tips and some recommendations, and people will see like he is on something, he is right, like yeah, he recommended something that really helped me. So when he comes back, I will visit him in person or work with him. So I think it's important to already start working on contacts, customers, and so on.
That makes sense. I guess, I mean, your YouTube presence is starting to do that, right? Obviously, like you're growing a brand for yourself and building those connections. Do you go back to Slovakia at any times to do client work, or?
Last year I went for 1 month. So every year we can go for 2 weeks. But I decided to go every second year for 4 weeks, for 1 month, because then you have enough time for customer work, for family. But in my case, last year when I went to Slovakia for 1 month, it was almost no family time. It was from 28 days, or like from 30 days. I spent time with family maybe 3 days. The rest was just, I was always somewhere working.
That's awesome. So in the US, I feel like bonsai is growing really quickly. So there's a lot of room for professionals. Do you feel like it's the same in Europe, in Slovakia?
Yeah,
like
I think
it feels like it's growing. And okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, your kind of generation of apprentices, I think, will still have really good, hopefully bonsai keeps growing, and we're going to have a lot more space for professionals, especially doing really good work. So it's got to be exciting to be at the kind of beginning of a big upswing in the hobby and the profession. Are there a lot of Japanese trained professionals in Europe?
I don't think that there are much. There are some people that went as a short-term apprentices for a tourist visa for 3 months, but I don't think there is many people that did full-time.
Do you think, well, this is kind of a side question, but do you think those 3-month type apprenticeships, like how much can you really learn in that 3-month period? Like how does it compare to a I don't mean this from the perspective of like invalidating the work that those other people do, but I've been thinking, for me as a hobbyist, like I would love to learn in Japan, but the matter of the fact is that I can't leave my job for, I would have to take a break from my career to do that, right? If I was going to come for multiple years. But like 3 months, I could potentially take off 3 months from work. So I'm curious, like, how effective do you think those things would be for a hobbyist to kind of accelerate their learning? Or, do you think it's useful to do those kind of 3-month stints?
I think it's not bad. Like, of course, it is useful, but I think it's more like a vacation. Like you will just come to experience it and enjoy it, how bonsai is in Japan. But I don't think you will learn much. It's more just exposure to what bonsai is in Japan.
That makes sense. I think to be able to get that amount of that value out of like a 3-month experience, I think you'd have to go and have like a very specific niche thing that you want to get really good at. I want to style Shohin junipers, and do deadwood work, like creating fin deadwood, and like that. You'd have to only do that one thing for 3 months, I feel like, to actually advance a technique. And I don't know that that's offered really anywhere. Nobody's just going to have like, here's my really advanced technique that I'm doing that's really special that I'm going to like just let foreigners or whoever come over and do for 3 months. Like, I don't know that really exists, but I'm curious whether you've seen something like that.
I think if you go to Japan at the correct season, you might end up doing most of the time what you want. Like, for example, learning how to make really nice Shohin juniper, or wiring or whatever you want, but you need to come at the right season or at the right time. But also important thing to understand when you are coming just for 3 months, and let's say you are doing bonsai for 5 years already in Europe or US. First thing you need to learn when you come under the Japanese master, that you need to learn to do it his way. So it's almost like first you need to unlearn what you already know. And that's a problem because in 3 months that's very difficult. That's probably the most difficult part about becoming apprentice in a, just if we talk about learning, because first, yeah, you need to unlearn everything. You visited local professionals and they show you how they do their work, their trees. But then you come to Japan and suddenly you see, like, maybe it's not necessarily everything wrong, but it's completely different. So if you do that type of work, yeah, your master will change everything. So in 3 months, yeah, I don't think it's enough time to even unlearn.
That's good. That's good perspective and experience. It's good to know. So I would love to understand a little bit more about what a day in the life of the apprenticeship looks like. So do you mind taking me through, like, what is your schedule? Where do you live? You know, those kind of things.
So at Aichi-en, you are uchideshi, which means you are apprentice that lives with a family. So we live with my master's family in a garden. We have separate buildings. So they live in a family house, and we have apprentice's house, which is just buildings with 2 rooms. So it's like a dorm almost. My day is I wake up at 6 a.m. and wait for breakfast, which is usually at 7, and all the food is prepared by my oyakata, by my master. So he cooks and takes care of everything. So around 7 o'clock, 7 a.m., we go eat breakfast and just the personal hygiene and stuff. At 8, we start the work. Then the work depends on the season. So for example, now because it's end of summer, we are repotting some trees because it's good timing, or cleaning junipers, and soon we'll start to pull or remove old needles for Japanese white pines. And yeah, this work is until 12. Then we eat lunch. We have lunch break until 1 p.m. And then the work continues until 5 p.m. But that's only maintenance. So these 8 or 9 hours you are doing just maintenance. But then you need to get better, right? You need to get better in wiring or in a deadwood work or any kind of work. So then from 5 to whatever time you want, you need to stay in workshop and practice. So this like wiring work is usually in the night. I stay usually around until 10 or 11 and then go quickly take shower and sleep. So I have at least 7 hours of sleep.
And are you doing that 5 days a week, 7 days a week?
6 days a week.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. You have the actual work of running a bonsai garden and making sure the trees progress, but then, you also want to, learn style and design and, different things that you need feedback from your oyakata on that happen outside of the hours of the main actual like workday chunk. So your master he finishes his day at 5, and then you might work on other things. And then when do you get feedback on your work?
So yeah, he finishes around 5, and then he goes to prepare dinner. And yeah, I can ask for extra work or nighttime work, and he tells me, yeah, wire this tree or do something on this tree. I do it, let's say, in 2-3 days, and then when it's ready, when it's finished, I ask him to check it, and yeah, when he has time, he will check it and give me a feedback.
Awesome. And what does the actual learning process look like? Like, does Tanaka-san, whenever you're in your 4th year now, so you probably know how to do most things, or a lot of things, but whenever he's like, the first time you did maintenance pruning on a trident maple or whatever, did he just have you watch him do it? Did he say like, here, I'm going to teach you this, and then you're going to do it on these 10 trees? What did the actual teaching process look like?
So in Japan, teaching is very different compared to Europe, because or US, I think, because in Europe, people usually take time with you, explain you everything first, like the theoretical part first, and then you can start to try it yourself. But in Japan, it's more like, look, here's a tree, just cut it back. He shows you quickly, maybe 2-3 seconds, how to do it, and then you have to do it on your own. And then you call him, and you call your oyakata, and he tells you if it's good or no. And of course, you're starting this work on very cheap trees. And once it's get better, he will tell you do it on an expensive tree. But in Japan, mostly it's on your own, and then it's a feedback from your master.
What are your thoughts on that learning process? Because it must have been kind of tough to adjust to, given you came up through a different kind of learning tradition in Europe.
I honestly, this type of a subject like a bonsai or any other craft, when you are using your hands and your brain, I think it's a lot better, because when you are doing it yourself and you're experiencing some problems that you need to overcome yourself, you are using your own brain and you are learning how to deal with the problems instead of asking for help. So that teach you a lot. It's the start might be a little bit slower, but because you are always using your own brain and trying to deal with problems, in future it will pay off, because you will know very quickly how to deal with almost anything.
That makes sense. I hadn't actually thought of that before, but yeah, maybe some of the Japanese teaching philosophy is defined by, hey, this is what they've seen has been really effective to teach people hands-on trades. Whereas in the US, at least, the education system for kids is geared towards getting them into like college or like higher education, not necessarily into a trade. And so we teach people in a specific way that leads to them doing well on exams and things that you don't use your hands for. So that's actually very interesting. I never thought of it like that, but a really cool, I think, nugget of wisdom. So thanks for sharing that. So how has your apprenticeship changed over this arc of 4 years? I mean, you've been there for a long time now. When you first joined, you were the most junior apprentice, and then, over time, new people have joined and you're more senior. But I'm curious, like, have your actual duties or like what you do from a day-to-day, has that changed over that 4-year period?
I think it stayed pretty much same, because at Aichi-en, you do everything since day one. You just don't do it on high-end stuff. Like, when you are talking about bonsai, yeah, you do everything. And then taking care of garden, you also need to do everything. So because the garden is very big, and now usually it's 3 apprentices plus the oyakata, so everybody needs to do everything. And just over time you do it faster, you do it better, so you will end up with a little bit more responsibilities. But other than that, yeah, you do everything.
And do you also do when you say everything, does that also include the like interactions with clients? Like, are you doing some of the business side of stuff? Okay, so you have learned Japanese and can interact with, clients. And
when Japanese clients come, we have Japanese apprentice, so he deals with the Japanese customers. But when foreigners come, I go out and deal with them.
Awesome. And then, I saw you at the Meifuten show that your nursery puts on. Were you always going to these types of shows just already from the beginning, or was that something that you were allowed to do like later on in your apprenticeship? Or
no, I was
like
going.
You go.
Yeah, I was going there from the first year, because, as I said, there is too much work, so everybody needs to do everything. And since I came July 13th, I came to Aichi-en, and Meifuten is 6 months later. So after just 6 months, I had to start preparing trees for exhibition and stuff.
Makes sense. Awesome. Yeah, I think that seems like a great way as an apprentice. Like, that seems like a really good teaching path, or getting to do meaningful work right away. It's not a waste of your time, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that seems great. As a small sort of aside, talking about your apprenticeship, could you share like a specific story? Like, are there any memories that stick in your mind of like where you learned something really important Like either you made a mistake and your oyakata corrected you in a specific way, or I'm sure you've learned a bajillion things, but are there any memories of learning bonsai that stick out to you from your apprenticeship?
I actually recently thought about this, and it's a bit interesting because when you are in a garden, you learn slowly everything, but very big jump in in my growing in a bonsai was actually last year when I went to Slovakia, because when I was doing customer work, it was like completely on my own. So at that time, it little bit like clicked in my brain, and suddenly I started to see things a little bit different because I had to, because when I was dealing with the customer, now I was the master, the professional, and he was the student. So yeah, probably that was a time when it changed a bit.
That makes a ton of sense. You figure out really quickly what you don't know whenever you have to tell it to someone else, or you have to do the work without anybody. There's no oversight, right? It's not like you can do the work for the client and then somebody else will come and check it for you. It's like, no, I mean,
exactly.
Whether the client is happy or not is based on the work that you do right there with your own brain. So I'm sure you came back from that learning experience and it guided your questions, or like the work the one that you wanted to do with your oyakata, right? Because you could get that feedback. That's a really good point, I think. I think that's something that even hobbyists can take advantage of, is at some point in their trajectory of learning, start to take on some work for others or maybe some client work. They don't have to do it at a large scale, but even just having those like, hey, the customer is relying on me doing this high quality work to give them a tree, even if it's just on like lower quality material for a client, I think can be a really good experience because it gives you that aha moment of, oh, I really need to figure this out because I'm doing it myself. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of the inside baseball of how does Aichi-en fit into the greater bonsai ecosystem in Japan? Like, what are the well, first, maybe let's just start with like, are there specific specialties of the nursery, and how long has, I know I think there's at least 3 generations that have been at Aichi-en of Tanaka-san's family, but yeah.
My oyakata is 4th generation now.
4th generation, wow.
Yeah, it's the nursery age is coming to 130 years. So yeah, it's long tradition.
And that's all within the same family, like the father to son. Wow.
And now, my oyakata has 3 sons, and seems like the oldest one will take over. So hopefully there will be 5th generation.
Wow. So does the nursery specialize in like a specific part of the bonsai process, like, and then what kind of species do they focus on specific species, or it's everything?
We do every species, but because we are in Nagoya, and Nagoya is very hot. It's almost like tropical. It's just on the edge of being tropical and like a normal climate. So we cannot have trees that needs more cool summer. Like for example, Japanese yew, it's very difficult to grow. Or the Ezo spruce, it's impossible. Like they will just die in summer. No matter how much shade you will provide or how much you will water, they will just give up because it's too hot. So we mainly have black pines, but yeah, we have all kinds of trees, but mainly black pines because they are used to, like, because black pines are coastal trees, so they're used to hot summer.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I guess I didn't really think of that, but yeah, the climate of the area that you're in dictates some of the trees that you can grow and maintain there. Is the majority of the work for like on clients' trees? Do you have a large stock of like trees that the nursery owns that they make and sell? Like, what is the kind of business side of the nursery look like?
I think probably 99% of trees are owned by my oyakata. We have customers, but we are not focused on customer work so much. It's more like, as I said, my master sees more like his hobby, his lifestyle. So he's just enjoying his trees, I can say.
That's awesome. That's so interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that at the beginning, that this isn't his main source of income.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean that as like, but he spends a lot of hours doing bonsai, so he doesn't have some
Yeah.
other job, right? Or like how does that
No.
work?
He has some properties to like rentals and stuff.
Okay, makes sense. That's amazing. So he really gets to focus on building the best bonsai
Mm-hmm.
that he can, and the time scale doesn't really matter, right? For him,
Yeah.
he can have those third, fourth generation trees in his garden that have been bonsai for 100 plus years.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes a lot of sense, or that guides the Aichi-en ecosystem, like the tenets or like the core beliefs of the Aichi-en ecosystem make sense in light of that information about how the nursery is run, right? You really,
Mm-hmm.
if you're planning for multi-generational trees, you need the design to have good longevity, right? It needs to grow and age gracefully. You can't make an instant bonsai, or it wouldn't make any sense, right? Because then you're just giving yourself a lot more work for a tree that you want to mature over a 30, 40, 50-year period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are there specific species that you really like working with at Aichi-en? Like you're like, oh, they do the best trident maples, or are there some species where you're like, oh, I really like this approach, but you like somebody else's approach on a different type of tree, or you really like the general philosophy across all the species?
I think I like everything that we do at Aichi-en. The trident, as you mentioned, trident maples, I think Aichi-en makes best ones. Usually they are on a rocks, like root over rocks, and yeah, probably they are best root over rocks that you can find in Japan.
Yeah, I was wowed by the deciduous trees and the trident maples, especially when I visited the nursery. It was like, you can't find something like that anywhere. So those are truly amazing.
And pretty much all of them are field grown from a cutting. So you take a huge rock and put a small cutting on top, and then put it in a field, cover whole rock with the sand, and yeah, over time you expose more and more roots, and 100 years later you have nice trident maple.
Yeah, definitely a long-term
Yeah.
approach. What's the goal of the nursery? Is there one? Like, does Tanaka-san talk about like, oh, this is the mission of the nursery, or how does he convey like what he's about?
Right now, as I mentioned, it's most about enjoying his trees, because now he can do it. But before, past generations had to also focus more on a business side, because they just started, like first or second generation. But now he has, as I said, some properties he can have the income from. So he's just focusing on building really nice bonsai trees, and no matter how
Nice.
much time it takes. But also we do a quicker bonsai, not only meaning like instant bonsai to make it look nice in a day, but let's say in a year or two, and then we sell those. But most of the trees or projects are long term.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, it makes sense. I kind of, this makes me think of like American businesses where, the stock always has to go up. So every quarter you have to be better and better. But so you make these really short-term decisions. But it seems like the philosophy of Aichi-en is let's make the best decision so that for the long term we have the best tree, which is cool. Do you think other nurseries in Japan have a different focus on
Oh yeah,
like tree?
every garden, every nursery is different. Yeah, I think right now, most likely from a very known big nurseries or places that are run by professionals, Aichi-en is probably last garden or nursery that's still focusing on a like really good structure and long term, instead of maybe making decent structure and making tree in a 2 or 3 years. So that's probably a focus on most nurseries now, to little bit balance it out instead of just looking so many years ahead. But I don't mean it in a bad way. There is nothing wrong with it. It's just different type of business. It's like everywhere, any kind of business, you have always more options how you want to run your business.
Absolutely. Well, and somebody may or may not like the long-term structure also leads to a certain aesthetic, right? Like the tree looks a
Yeah.
certain way and has a certain proportion, right? And so there are some trade-offs you make to get a more dense tree, right, versus a less dense tree or whatever. And so, people can have different aesthetic preferences, right? But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All the students from Aichi-en that I've seen make really, really highly technical, condensed, like very compact designs that have a lot of ramification. Cool. Do you think there's any secrets to like the health of the trees that you're able to get at Aichi-en, like any horticultural secrets, or not secrets, like things that you could share, but do you think there's anything unique to the way that you do horticulture at Aichi-en from what you've seen?
Well, we keep it very simple. We don't really see it from a scientific perspective. We just give a tree good fertilizer, water every time it needs. Try to not overwater trees that stays wet for too long, because they have different type of soil, because they need that type of soil for better development. And yeah, if there is a problem, we deal with the problem, but I don't think there is anything special. It depends on a tree, but I think it's pretty normal.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, I mean, this has answered a lot of my questions. I was really fascinated to hear about the structure of your apprenticeship, and hearing about your journey in bonsai is very cool as well. I actually don't know how old you are, but knowing like somebody who commits to something so heavily at such a young age, like for me, that was something that I struggled a lot with. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I kind of just followed the path that was there. But I have a lot of respect for people who figure it out and commit to something, and then you've obviously put in the work of tens of thousands of hours of apprenticeship. Do you anticipate staying for 5 years plus a sixth year in Japan and then going back to Europe, or what's your long-term plan?
I think I will stay just 5 years, but it's because at Aichi-en, our Oyakata, he doesn't ask for sixth year. It's more like, if you are ready, you are ready. And because the thing is, the sixth year is good if you are staying in Japan, or if you are a Japanese apprentice, because that time you are more like in between. You are not really apprentice anymore. You are more in between, like a professional and salaryman, or like working for your Oyakata. So you also can do some business on your own and slowly shift towards your own business. So I think that's what sixth year is made for, to be like a bridge in between starting your own thing and still being a little bit under your master.
That makes a lot of sense. And that makes a lot of sense that, well, with Aichi-en not being as focused on the business aspect, you can really do what's best for the apprentice, for what's best for you, right? And so that makes sense that, once you have the knowledge that takes that 5 years to build, then you can go and start your business, right, where you will. And if you're doing it in Japan, then that kind of bridge can be helpful. But if you're doing it in Europe, then starting earlier is better, right? So you can start ramping up your clients. Makes sense. That's really cool. So yeah, I would love to hear, do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your YouTube channel and or anything that you want to plug or talk a little bit about, just so that if people want to hear more from you, like where can they do that, and like what's the kind of ethos, or like what kind of content are you trying to make for folks? What are you trying to teach, or what kind of connections are you trying to make?
So now, almost 1 year ago, I started doing YouTube videos. My main focus was just to show people what happens when you do a really good structure on a tree, and just teach the proper bonsai in my eyes. Because bonsai, it's every single person have a little bit different perspective or point of view about bonsai. So in what's proper bonsai in my eyes, or in Aichi-en eyes. So that's what I try to teach at my YouTube channel. And yeah, then I have Instagram, where I post pictures of finished trees or just some stuff we are doing. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm using right now, just YouTube and Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great ways to connect, I think. That's also, well, I'm also on that. I've reached out to apprentices before when I wanted to visit Japan or something like that through Instagram, and it's always a great way to make connections. Are you going to be at Kokofu in 2026?
Oh, the 100th anniversary?
Yeah.
I will
Okay,
go.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll see you there then. That'll be great. I would
Yeah,
also
but
love to, once you start your business in Slovakia,
uh-huh.
whenever I'm visiting my friends, my family, I'll come visit you as well. That would be fun.
Yeah, you should.
Do you want to
But
just call out the name of your YouTube and your
yeah.
Instagram? Yeah.
So both my YouTube and Instagram is just my name, Andrej Bonsai. Very simple.
Awesome. And then were you going to say something about Kokufu, or did I
Oh
interrupted you?
yeah.
Or
Yeah, I wanted to say that we are not going to most likely to be at Kokofu as a garden, as a Aichi-en. You know, we will not have a sales area. We might put some tree up to the show, but I will be there only for like a day in my day off.
okay, hopefully it overlaps.
Yeah,
Just you're going as like a enthusiast. Yeah, makes
yeah.
sense. Awesome. Do you think it'll be special? Like, I'm just assuming that because it's the hundredth, they'll have, they'll pull out all the stops. But have you heard whispers of that in the Japanese community, or like, are they treating it as
Yeah,
special?
there are some things that I heard, but I think it's never said officially, so maybe it's better if I don't say. I don't know.
No, of course. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. It's good to hear that there'll be some cool stuff. So awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for taking the time. I also, whenever we were in Japan, it was great to meet you and chat with you. I definitely encourage folks to reach out to make a connection with you whenever they're visiting. And then, yeah, your story is definitely, I loved hearing about, or like changing my perspective on how the learning philosophy of Japan, like the practice of learning through doing, learning that really is a very effective way to actually grasp these like really hands-on skills. So that was really interesting to hear. I'm curious for folks that are listening to hear whether or not they've thought of apprenticing in Japan or going to Japan for a period. So definitely let me know and reach out to me, and you can contact me at Teeny Trees on Instagram. Thanks so much, Andre. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a good day at nursery.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome.